Story number 1. Screams from the basement. Winter in Ohio has a way of seeping into your bones. A relentless chill that wraps around every corner of your life. My name is David Miller, and like many families, my wife Sarah and our 2 children, Emma and Jack, sought refuge from the biting cold in our modest home on Elm Street. Little did we know, our sanctuary held secrets darker than the longest nights. It started innocuously enough. Late one December evening, as snowflakes danced outside our windows, I heard faint noises emanating from the basement. At first, I dismissed them as the usual creaks and groans of an old house settling into the night. But as the days grew shorter and the nights colder, the sounds became more persistent, soft, desperate wails that seemed to echo through the walls. Sarah noticed it too. "It's probably just the wind," she suggested one night, trying to reassure our children. But Emma and Jack weren't so easily comforted. Their eyes, wide with fear, mirrored the unease that settled over our household. One particularly frigid night, around midnight, the sounds intensified. What had once been indistinct murmurs transformed into clear, anguished cries of a woman. It was as if someone was calling out for help, their voice laden with sorrow and desperation. The screams echoed through the house, bouncing off the walls and rattling the windows. Determined to uncover the source, I decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of dread, I descended the creaky basement stairs. The air grew colder with each step, a biting chill that seemed to penetrate my very soul. The basement was cluttered with old furniture, boxes, and forgotten memories, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary until I reached the far end of the room. There, against the far wall, stood an old, weathered mirror. It was an antique piece, its ornate frame chipped and faded with age. As I approached, the temperature dropped further, my breath visible in the frigid air. The mirror reflected the dim light, but something felt off. I glanced around, half expecting to see someone standing behind me, but the basement remained empty. Suddenly, the mirror shimmered, and the reflection began to change. Instead of the cluttered basement, I saw a different room, a pristine, well-lit space that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. A woman stood by the window, her back to me, gazing out into the snowy night. Her presence was both captivating and haunting, a stark contrast to the dilapidated basement. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and touched the glass. The mirror rippled like water disturbed by a stone, and before I could react, I was pulled through, landing with a thud on the cold, hard floor of the mysterious room. Disoriented, I looked around, realizing I was in a bedroom that felt both familiar and foreign. The furniture was immaculate, untouched by time, and the air was thick with an inexplicable tension. The woman from the mirror turned to face me, her eyes filled with an overwhelming sadness. "Help me," she whispered, her voice echoing through the room. I can't move on. Fear and compassion warred within me. "Who are you? What happened here?" Her gaze drifted to a portrait on the wall, a family portrait featuring a man, a woman, and 2 children, eerily similar to my own. "We were a happy family," she began, her voice breaking. "But tragedy struck one winter night. A fire consumed our home, and I couldn't save my children. Their souls are trapped here, unable to find peace." I felt a surge of empathy. "Is there a way to help them?" She nodded slowly. "You must release us from our bonds. Find the locket we lost in the fire and return it to us. Only then can we move on." Determined to assist, I embarked on a quest to uncover the truth behind the fire. Days turned into nights as I scoured old records, interviewed neighbors, and pieced together the fragments of a tragedy long forgotten. The fire had been a devastating event, rumored to have been caused by a faulty heater, but whispers suggested darker forces at play, accidents that weren't quite accidents. One night, as I pored over dusty newspaper clippings, the basement noises returned with a vengeance. The screams were louder, more desperate, guiding me back to the mirror. "Find the locket," The cries echoed, pulling me towards the basement once more. Armed with newfound determination, I returned to the basement, flashlight in hand. The mirror awaited, the surface calm and still. I touched the glass again, and the familiar pull dragged me into the other world. This time, I was prepared. The room greeted me with an air of urgency. The woman from before standing by the window, her eyes pleading. "We must hurry," she urged. "The flames are reigniting, and time is running out." Together, we navigated the house, following the trail of flickering lights and the scent of smoke. The atmosphere was heavy with the oppressive heat of an unending fire, the walls seeming to close in around us. Finally, we reached the remains of the living room, the heart of the tragedy. Amidst the charred debris, I spotted a small, ornate locket half buried in the ashes. "Here," I whispered, picking it up. The locket felt cold, its surface engraved with intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. "Take it to the chapel," the woman instructed, her voice barely audible over the crackling flames. "It will complete the ritual and free us." Without hesitation, I followed her guidance, the oppressive heat intensifying with each step. The chapel was a small, forgotten room at the end of a long hallway, its walls adorned with faded religious symbols. I placed the locket on the altar, the fire surrounding us beginning to subside as the locket absorbed the remaining flames. A blinding light enveloped the room, and I felt a sense of release wash over me. The spirits of the family began to fade, their forms becoming translucent and ethereal. "Thank you," the woman whispered, her voice filled with peace. "You've given us the gift of rest." As the last of the spirits vanished, I found myself back in my basement, the oppressive chill replaced by a comforting warmth. The basement was just as I had left it, cluttered, dusty, and silent. The mirror stood innocently on the wall, reflecting my own tired eyes. The experience left an indelible mark on me. Our home felt different, lighter somehow, as if the shadows that once loomed over us had been lifted. The noises ceased, replaced by the soothing sounds of a peaceful winter night. My family and I found a renewed sense of harmony, grateful for the unseen forces that had guided me through the darkness. But every so often, when the night is particularly still and the wind carries a faint melody through the air, I catch a whisper of Eleanor's voice, soft and full of gratitude. It serves as a reminder that some spirits linger not out of malice, but out of love and a yearning for peace. And in those moments, I am thankful for the chance to help a family find their way home, bridging the gap between the living and the dead with compassion and courage. Story number 2. Shadows in the Mirror. Winter in Michigan was unforgiving. The cold seeped into every crack and crevice, turning even the simplest tasks into challenges. My name is Mark Thompson, and like many others in our small town, I relied on my old wood-burning stove to keep the biting chill at bay. Each morning, I'd venture into the basement to gather firewood, a routine that had become second nature over the years. But one fateful night, my routine took a sinister turn that forever changed my perception of the ordinary. It was a particularly harsh December evening. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows and making the house groan under the weight of the storm. I pulled on my heavy coat, grabbed my flashlight, and made my way down the narrow stairs to the basement. The air grew colder the deeper I descended, the smell of damp wood and mildew filling my nostrils. The basement was dimly lit by a single, flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling, casting long, wavering shadows across the cluttered space. As I rummaged through the stacks of firewood, my flashlight beam caught something unusual in the corner of the room. A large, old mirror propped against the wall, covered in a thick layer of dust. It was an antique piece, ornate, its glass slightly tarnished by years of neglect. I had never noticed it before, despite countless trips down to the basement. Curious, I wiped away the grime, revealing the mirror's intricate frame and the reflective surface beyond. I stared into the mirror, expecting to see my own reflection staring back at me. Instead, I saw something or someone else. A shadowy figure stood behind me, its outline indistinct but undeniably human. My heart raced as I spun around, flashlight in hand. But the basement was empty. No one was there. The only sound was the relentless beating of my own heart and the distant rumble of thunder outside. "Hello," I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The basement remained silent, the storm outside masking any potential response. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. It had to be my imagination, a trick of the light or my mind playing games in the isolation of the basement. Shaking off the unease, I turned back to the mirror, only to see the figure gone. Relieved, I continued gathering the firewood, dismissing the eerie sighting as nothing more than a hallucination brought on by the stress of the long winter nights. But as the days passed, the incidents became more frequent and unsettling. One night, as I descended to the basement, the temperature seemed to drop even further, the chill biting into my skin despite the layers of clothing. The storm had intensified, lightning illuminating the basement in harsh, unforgiving bursts of light. I approached the mirror once more, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. There it was again, a shadowy presence standing behind me, watching. This time, instead of turning around immediately, I stood frozen, my eyes locked with the figure in the mirror. The air grew thick with tension, the silence oppressive. The figure remained still, its presence both haunting and sorrowful. I felt an inexplicable pull, a connection that transcended the physical realm. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice quivering with fear and curiosity. The figure didn't respond, but the basement seemed to grow colder, the shadows deepening as if reacting to the encounter. I finally summoned the courage to turn around, expecting to see someone standing there. But the basement was empty once more. The only thing left was the mirror, reflecting my own trembling image. Unable to ignore the phenomenon any longer, I decided to investigate further. I researched the history of my house, digging through old records and newspaper archives. What I discovered sent a chill down my spine. Over a century ago, the house had been the site of a tragic accident. Eleanor Hart, a young woman living alone, had perished in a fire that consumed the basement. No one knew exactly what had happened, and the circumstances remained a mystery. Some speculated it was an accident, while others whispered about darker forces at play. The more I learned about Eleanor, the more the occurrences in my basement made sense. Her story echoed through the shadows of the mirror, a restless spirit unable to find peace. I felt a responsibility to help her, to understand why her presence lingered and what she needed to move on. Determined to communicate, I returned to the basement armed with candles, sage, and a notebook to document my experiences. I set up a small altar near the mirror, the flickering candlelight casting dancing shadows on the walls. Taking a deep breath, I began to speak, addressing the spirit I believed to be Eleanor. "Eleanor Hart," I called out, my voice steadier this time. "I know you're here. I want to help you find peace. Please, tell me what you need." For a moment, nothing happened. The basement remained silent, the storm outside continuing its relentless assault. Then, slowly, the temperature began to rise, the oppressive chill lifting as a sense of calm washed over the room. The mirror shimmered, and Eleanor's figure appeared once more, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. "I cannot leave," she whispered, her voice echoing softly. "My spirit is bound to this place by the pain and sorrow I endured." I listened intently, feeling a deep empathy for her plight. "What can I do to help you move on?" Her figure faded slightly, the edges of her form becoming translucent. "You must help me remember, relive the night of the fire, and understand the pain that kept me here." Understanding dawned on me. To free Eleanor, I needed to recreate the events of that tragic night, to bring her memories to the surface and allow her spirit to process her unresolved grief. It was a daunting task, but I was determined to assist her in finding peace. Over the following weeks, I meticulously recreated the conditions of that fateful night. I lit candles in the same positions, played soft music that Eleanor might have loved, and created an atmosphere that mirrored the warmth and chaos of the fire. Each night, I returned to the basement, guiding Eleanor through her memories, helping her confront the pain that bound her spirit. The process was emotionally draining, but as the days turned into nights, I began to notice subtle changes. The mirror reflected not just a shadowy figure, but moments of Eleanor's past smiles, laughter, and the sudden, horrifying chaos of the fire. Through these glimpses, I saw the love and loss that defined her existence, understanding the depth of her sorrow. One stormy night, as I guided Eleanor through her final memories, the basement was filled with the sounds of crackling flames and anguished cries. The mirror became a portal to the past, allowing me to witness the tragic events that had unfolded. I reached out, holding Eleanor's hand through the glass, offering comfort and assurance. As the ritual reached its climax, the storm outside mirrored the intensity of the moment. The candles flickered violently, and the air was thick with the scent of smoke and burning wood. Eleanor's spirit stood beside me, her presence now more tangible, her pain slowly transforming into acceptance. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "I can finally move on." A brilliant light enveloped the basement, the shadows dissipating as the oppressive energy lifted. The mirror reflected my own image once more, the space around me now warm and inviting. Eleanor's spirit had found peace, her suffering finally at an end. The occurrences ceased, replaced by a serene calm that settled over the house. I felt a profound sense of accomplishment and relief, knowing that I had played a role in helping a lost soul find her way. The basement, once a place of fear and mystery, had become a sanctuary of understanding and compassion. Life returned to normal, the winter nights no longer filled with eerie whispers and shadowy figures. But the memory of Eleanor Hart lingered, a testament to the thin veil that separates our world from the next and the power of empathy to bridge the gap between life and death. Sometimes, when the night is particularly still and the wind whispers through the trees, I catch a faint melody in the air. A hauntingly beautiful reminder of the night I helped a spirit find peace and the enduring bonds that connect us all. Story number 3. The basement that never froze. Winter in New York can be merciless. The cold bites through layers of clothing, turning breath into visible puffs of steam. Yet, in our home on Elm Street, the basement remained an anomaly. While the world outside succumbed to frost and ice, our basement never knew the chill. It was perpetually warm, the air carrying an inexplicable heat that defied the frigid temperatures above. At first, I dismissed it as poor insulation or perhaps a faulty heating system. But as the seasons turned, the basement's peculiarity grew harder to ignore. My name is Thomas Mitchell, and I live here with my wife, Laura, and our 2 children, Emma and Jake. Moving into this house had seemed like the perfect fresh start after years of cramped apartments and relentless city noise. The charm of the old brick building, with its high ceilings and spacious rooms, had been irresistible. Little did we know, the house held secrets that would unravel our sense of safety and reality. It was late December when the first whispers began. Emma was 7, a curious and imaginative girl who often wandered the halls with her stuffed animals. One night, she tugged at my sleeve, her eyes wide with concern. "Dad, the basement is talking to me." I chuckled, brushing it off as a figment of her active imagination. "Talking? What are they saying?" "Sweetheart." Emma shook her head, tears welling up. "They're sad. They want me to help them." Laura, ever the skeptic, had similar dismissals. "Probably just the old pipes or the wind," she suggested. But Emma's distress was palpable, and I couldn't ignore her fear. The basement had always been a place of mystery. Despite its warmth, it was cluttered with old furniture, boxes of forgotten belongings, and the remnants of previous lives. Laura had suggested renovating it to create a playroom for the kids. But the basement's strange climate made the idea less appealing. As days turned into weeks, the basement's behavior became more erratic. Objects would shift positions when no one was around, and the temperature fluctuated unpredictably. One particularly harsh night, the storm outside raged with a fury that matched my growing unease. Lightning illuminated the basement door as I descended to check on Emma, who was unable to sleep due to her persistent nightmares. The basement door creaked open, revealing the dimly lit room. Emma sat on the floor, hugging her knees, her eyes darting nervously around the space. "I heard them crying," she whispered, her voice trembling. Before I could respond, a cold draft swept through the room, extinguishing the overhead light and plunging us into darkness. My flashlight flickered to life, its beam cutting through the shadows. "Emma, it's okay. I'll get the light," I reassured her, though my own heart pounded in my chest. As I reached for the light switch, the basement seemed to come alive with whispers, soft, sorrowful murmurs that echoed off the walls. I strained to make out the words, but they were indistinct, like a chorus of lost souls lamenting their plight. Determined to uncover the source, I began searching the basement, flashlight in hand. Dust motes danced in the beam, and the air was thick with the scent of aged wood and dampness. It was then that I noticed a section of the basement wall that seemed slightly ajar, a small gap revealing a hidden cavity behind the plaster. Curiosity piqued. I pried open the wall further, revealing a narrow passageway leading to a concealed room. The door was old and worn, the wood splintered and the hinges rusted. As I pushed it open, a surge of warmth enveloped me, the air heavy with the scent of decay and something else, something metallic. Inside, the room was sparsely furnished, a single wooden chair placed in the center. On the floor lay a tattered journal, its pages yellowed with age and the ink faded. I picked it up, the brittle pages crumbling in my hands, and began to read. October 15th, 1985. They say this place is cursed, that the basement holds more than just old memories. Every winter, the chill takes hold, and the warmth becomes a trap. I can hear them, whispers of the lost, voices that call out for help. If you're reading this, know that they are restless, bound to this place by unfinished business and untold sorrow. Please, if you find yourself here, do not let them consume you as they did me. The words sent a shiver down my spine. Eleanor Hart, a name I had never heard before, appeared in the margins, her story a haunting echo of our own experiences. As I closed the journal, the whispers grew louder, more urgent. The room's oppressive warmth felt like a living entity, pressing in on me from all sides. I knew then that the basement was more than just an architectural oddity. It was a prison for lost souls, their presence intertwined with the very fabric of our home. Determined to help, I shared the journal with Laura. Together, we delved into the building's history, uncovering the tragic tale of Eleanor Hart. She had been a tenant in apartment 4A, a young woman who had lived alone after the untimely death of her husband. As the winter of 1985 descended, Eleanor became increasingly isolated, her mental state deteriorating under the relentless cold. One night, she vanished without a trace, leaving behind only whispers and the haunting melodies that seemed to emanate from the basement. Armed with this knowledge, we sought the help of a local historian and paranormal investigator, Dr. Laura Bennett. Her expertise provided us with the tools and understanding needed to confront the restless spirits that haunted our home. The night of the ritual was the coldest we had ever experienced. The wind howled outside, battering the windows and sending shadows dancing across the basement walls. We gathered the necessary items, candles, sage, and the journal, and prepared the hidden room for the ceremony. As midnight approached, the basement door swung open, the whispers escalating into anguished cries. Dr. Bennett began the incantations, her voice steady and commanding, while Laura and I maintained a circle of protection around us. The candles flickered, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to reach out for us. Eleanor's presence was undeniable. Her ghostly form materialized in the center of the room. Her eyes hollow and her expression one of deep sorrow. "Why won't you let us go?" she cried, her voice echoing through the chamber. I stepped forward, holding the journal. "Eleanor, we know your story. We're here to help you find peace." The air grew colder, and the shadows deepened, their malevolent energy pressing in on us. Dr. Bennett continued the ritual, her voice rising above the cacophony of whispers and cries. "Eleanor, release the pain that binds you. Let the living remember and honor your memory." Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes as she reached out a hand, her spectral form flickering with uncertainty. "We were forgotten, lost to the darkness. Thank you for remembering us." A surge of warmth enveloped the room, the oppressive energy lifting as Eleanor's spirit began to dissolve, her presence fading into the ether. The whispers turned into gentle sighs, and the room settled into a peaceful silence. As the ritual concluded, the basement door swung open once more, revealing a basement that felt lighter, freer. The warmth that had once been a trap was now a comforting embrace, a reminder of the lives we had touched and the peace we had restored. Life returned to normal in our home on Elm Street. The basement no longer held an unnatural warmth, and the whispers had ceased, replaced by the comforting sounds of a family finding their way through the harsh winter months. Emma and Jake were able to sleep peacefully, their nightmares a thing of the past. Reflecting on the experience, I realized the importance of remembering and honoring those who came before us. Eleanor Hart and her family's restless spirits had been trapped by their own sorrow, their voices silenced by time. By acknowledging their existence and helping them find peace, we had not only freed them but also strengthened the bonds of our own family. Sometimes, when the winter winds howl outside and the house settles into silence, I catch a faint melody drifting from the basement, a haunting yet beautiful reminder of the night we bridged the gap between the living and the dead. It's a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the belief that even in the darkest of places, there is hope for redemption and peace. Story number 4. Whispers within the walls. Winter had settled over Pennsylvania with a relentless grip, blanketing the landscape in a thick layer of snow that muffled the world outside. My wife, Laura, and I had recently moved into our new home on Maple Avenue. Drawn by its charming facade and the promise of a fresh start away from the chaos of city life, the house was older, with a rich history etched into its walls. But its character was precisely what we sought. From the beginning, there was an unsettling stillness about the place. The first few nights were peaceful, filled with the warmth of the fireplace and the simple joys of settling into our new life. But as the days grew shorter and the nights colder, strange occurrences began to unsettle our peace. It started subtly, soft murmurs that seemed to drift through the walls, almost inaudible, like distant conversations carried on the wind. Laura dismissed them as the house settling or perhaps the creaks of old plumbing pipes. I tried to convince myself the same, attributing the sounds to our imagination running wild in the isolation of winter. One particularly frigid night, as the wind howled outside and snowflakes danced violently against the windows, the murmurs grew louder. It was unmistakable now, voices, fragmented and indistinct, weaving through the walls of our bedroom. Laura stirred beside me, her eyes fluttering open with a mixture of confusion and fear. "Do you hear that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "Yeah, I do. It's coming from the basement." Basement. The word alone sent a chill down my spine. Our basement was a vast, unfinished space, cluttered with old furniture, boxes of forgotten belongings, and stacks of firewood that Laura insisted were necessary for the heating system. Despite its functionality, the basement had always felt like a place best left untouched, a cavernous expanse that held more shadows than light. The next evening, determination overrode our fear. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of uneasy resolve, Laura and I descended the creaky wooden stairs to the basement. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and mildew, the only sound our footsteps echoing in the vast space. As we approached the far wall, the murmurs intensified, morphing into clearer whispers that seemed to beckon us closer. The flashlight beam danced across the room, finally settling on a particular section of the wall that seemed slightly more damp than the rest. Without warning, a strong gust of wind blew through the basement, extinguishing the flashlight and plunging us into darkness. Panic surged through me as we fumbled to relight the flashlight. When it flickered back to life, we stood face to face with a section of the wall that appeared to be giving way, the plaster crumbling under our hands. Laura, ever the brave one, began to chip away at the deteriorating surface, revealing a hidden cavity behind the wall. Inside the cavity lay an old, dusty box, its surface worn and weathered by time. My hands trembled as I reached for it, the whispers now a cacophony of desperate voices. Carefully, I opened the box, revealing its contents, a collection of faded photographs and a set of children's clothing, each piece more tattered than the last. One photograph, in particular, caught my eye. It was a black and white image of a family, their smiles frozen in time. The children in the photo bore a striking resemblance to Laura and me, their innocent faces staring back with an unsettling familiarity. My stomach churned as I realized the implications. Could it be that this house had been home to another family? Long before us? Laura picked up a small, frayed dress, holding it up to the light. "This looks like it belonged to a little girl," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my mind racing with questions. Who were they? What happened here? The air in the basement seemed to grow colder, the whispers now forming coherent sentences. "Help us find peace," the voices pleaded, their sorrow palpable, determined to uncover the truth. We began to research the history of our home. Local archives and old newspaper clippings revealed a tragic story from over 50 years ago. The house had once belonged to the Hart family, a mother, father, and their 2 young children. According to reports, the family had perished in a devastating house fire, their lives cut short in a blaze that had consumed the entire home, including the basement. The discovery sent a shiver down my spine. The voices, the photos, the children's clothing, it all pointed to the restless spirits of the Hart family, trapped in a cycle of grief and longing. We realized that the basement was not just a storage space but a memorial of sorts, holding onto the memories of those who had been lost. Determined to help the spirits find peace, we enlisted the help of a local paranormal investigator, Dr. Laura Bennett. With her expertise and our willingness to confront the darkness, we prepared for a night of ritual and cleansing aimed at releasing the trapped souls. On the appointed night, the basement was illuminated by candles arranged in a protective circle. Dr. Bennett guided us through the ritual, her voice steady and soothing as she recited ancient incantations meant to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with anticipation and fear. As the ritual progressed, the basement seemed to come alive with an ethereal glow. The whispers intensified, swirling around us like a spectral dance. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted, and a ghostly apparition materialized before us. A woman with tear-streaked cheeks and hollow eyes, her form flickering like a dying flame. "Please," she whispered, her voice a haunting echo. "Help us." We continued the ritual, our voices merging with Dr. Bennett's chants. The apparition reached out a translucent hand, her presence both sorrowful and desperate. "We cannot move on," she pleaded. "Our memories are bound to this place." Understanding the depth of their torment, we intensified our efforts, pouring our empathy and determination into the ceremony. The room filled with a blinding light, the candles' flames dancing wildly as the spirits began to release their hold on the physical world. One by one, the apparitions of the Hart family faded, their anguished expressions softening into peaceful smiles. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a serene calm that settled over the basement. The whispers ceased, replaced by the comforting sounds of a quiet night outside. As the last spirit departed, Dr. Bennett looked at us with a satisfied nod. "They are finally at peace," she confirmed, her voice filled with relief. "The cycle has been broken." We sat there in the aftermath, the weight of the night's events sinking in. The basement, once a place of fear and mystery, now felt like a space reclaimed by peace and closure. We knew that the house had been a vessel for tragedy, but through our efforts, we had helped to heal the wounds that time had failed to mend. Life returned to normal in our home on Maple Avenue, the strange occurrences now a distant memory. The basement no longer held an unnatural warmth or echoed with desperate whispers. Emma and Jake slept peacefully, their nightmares a thing of the past, replaced by the comforting sounds of a safe and loving home. Reflecting on the experience, I realized the importance of acknowledging and honoring the past. No matter how painful, the Hart family's tragic story had been forgotten by time, but their spirits had reached out, seeking recognition and peace. By listening to their whispers and helping them find closure, we had not only freed them but also strengthened the bonds within our own family. Sometimes, when the winter winds howl outside and the house settles into a quiet slumber, I catch a faint melody drifting from the basement, a haunting yet beautiful reminder of the night we bridged the gap between the living and the dead. It serves as a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the belief that even in the darkest of places, there is hope for redemption and peace. Story number 5. The basement that won't stay closed. Winter in Wisconsin was unforgiving. The cold seeped through every crack and crevice of our old house on Elm Street, turning our breaths into visible puffs that vanished almost as quickly as they formed. My name is John Miller, and my wife, Laura, and our 2 children, Emily and Jake, had moved into this modest home 3 years ago, drawn by its affordability and the promise of a fresh start away from the chaos of city life. From the outside, the house looked unassuming, a weathered brick facade with peeling paint and ivy creeping up one side. Inside, it had a warmth that made it feel like home, despite its age. The basement, however, was a different story. It was a vast, unfinished space, cluttered with old furniture, boxes of forgotten belongings, and stacks of firewood that Laura insisted were necessary for the heating system. Despite its functionality, the basement always gave me an uneasy feeling, a sense that it held more than just physical clutter. The first sign that something was wrong came on a frigid December night. I was preparing dinner in the kitchen when I heard a soft thud coming from the basement. At first, I dismissed it as the house settling or perhaps a rodent scurrying about. But as the nights grew longer and colder, the sounds became more frequent and unmistakable, soft, deliberate knocks that echoed through the walls of our home. Laura noticed it too. One evening, as we sat in the living room with Emily and Jake doing their homework, she turned to me with a concerned expression. "John, have you heard those knocks from the basement again?" I nodded, trying to maintain a calm demeanor. "Yeah, probably just the house reacting to the cold. Maybe something in the basement shifting around." But deep down, I knew it wasn't just the house. There was something else, a presence that didn't belong. Something watching us from the shadows of the basement. Weeks passed, and the knocks continued unabated. Laura suggested we install a security camera in the basement to monitor any unusual activity. I agreed, hoping that documenting the noises would provide some explanation. We installed the camera above the basement door, connecting it to our smartphone so we could view the footage remotely. One particularly bitter night, after the children had gone to bed, I decided to review the day's footage. As I scrolled through the timestamps, my heart began to race. At exactly midnight, the basement door, which I was certain I had closed and locked, slowly creaked open. I leaned closer to the screen, my breath catching in my throat as I watched the door swing open further, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. I froze, fear gripping me as I realized that no one else was in the house. "That's impossible," I muttered to myself. There's no one down there. Just as I was about to turn away, I noticed something, a fleeting shadow moving across the frame, barely perceptible but undeniably human in shape. I rewound the footage, squinting to make out more details, but the shadow vanished as quickly as it had appeared. My mind raced with possibilities, ghosts, intruders, or perhaps a prankster, but none of them made sense. The next morning, I confronted Laura with the footage. Her face paled as she watched the video, her hand clutching a tissue to stifle a sob. "John, do you see that? What is it?" I shook my head, feeling a mixture of fear and frustration. "I don't know, Laura, but we need to find out what's going on." Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, I decided to investigate the basement myself. Armed with a flashlight and a heavy-duty doorstop to keep the basement door open, I ventured down into the cold, dark space. The basement was colder than usual, the air thick with moisture and the musty scent of damp wood. I began to search the area, looking for any signs of intrusion or unusual activity. As I moved deeper into the basement, the temperature seemed to drop even further, my breath forming clouds in front of me. The knocks had ceased, replaced by an oppressive silence that pressed in on me from all sides. My flashlight flickered, struggling against the darkness, when suddenly, it illuminated something that made my blood run cold. A small, old-fashioned doll sitting atop a dusty shelf. It was a porcelain doll, its once bright colors faded and chipped, its glassy eyes staring blankly ahead. I reached out to pick it up, feeling an inexplicable urge to touch it. But the moment my fingers brushed its cold surface, a surge of energy coursed through me. The basement door slammed shut, plunging the room into darkness, save for the eerie glow emanating from the doll. Panic set in as I fumbled to reach for the door, but it wouldn't budge. The room seemed to close in on me, the walls pulsing with an unseen force. Then, the whispers began, a soft, sorrowful melody that filled the air, growing louder and more insistent with each passing second. "Help us! Help us!" I spun around, my flashlight darting across the room. But there was nothing there, no one else in the basement. The whispers continued, their voices overlapping in a haunting chorus of despair. "Find us! Free us!" Desperate, I recalled the history of our home. Laura had mentioned that the previous owner, Eleanor Hart, had been a recluse who rarely left the house. She had passed away a few years ago, but we had never looked into the details of her life or death. Now, it seemed, her spirit and perhaps others were trapped within these walls, their suffering echoing through the basement. Determined to help, I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight app, using it to illuminate the doll more clearly. As I held the phone steady, the whispers transformed into distinct phrases, their meaning clear despite the ethereal quality of the voices. "Release us. Remember us." The realization hit me. Eleanor Hart's spirit was trying to communicate, to find a way to move on from the tragic circumstances that had bound her to this place. I needed to help her, to uncover the truth behind her sorrow and free her from the torment that kept her trapped in our basement. Summoning all my courage, I began searching the basement for any clues that might explain Eleanor's presence. Amidst the clutter, I found an old, tattered journal hidden beneath a pile of forgotten newspapers. The cover was cracked and worn, the pages yellowed with age. Carefully, I opened it, my eyes scanning the faded handwriting. October 12th, 1968. Today marks 1 year since the accident. The basement feels colder than ever, and I can hear the whispers every night. They call out my name, urging me to help them. I fear what lies beneath the surface and what secrets this house holds. I must find a way to protect my family from whatever darkness resides here. Reading Eleanor's journal, I pieced together the events that had led to her descent into madness. The accident mentioned had been a house fire that had ravaged the basement, claiming the lives of Eleanor and her 2 young children. The fire had left the house structurally unsound, and the basement had been the epicenter of the tragedy. It seemed the spirits of Eleanor and her children were trapped, unable to find peace after their untimely deaths. Understanding their plight, I knew I had to find a way to release them. The doll was a significant clue, a symbolic representation of Eleanor's lost children. I decided to create a makeshift altar, placing the doll at its center, surrounded by the remnants of the journal and photos of Eleanor's family that I had found scattered in the basement. As I set up the altar, the temperature in the basement began to rise, the oppressive chill replaced by a warm, comforting glow. The whispers softened, their sorrowful tones giving way to a sense of gratitude and hope. "Thank you. You're helping us." I began to speak, my voice steady despite the fear that still lingered. "Eleanor, I know what happened to you and your children. I want to help you find peace." The air around me shimmered, and the spirits of Eleanor and her children materialized before me, their forms translucent yet filled with an undeniable presence. Eleanor stood at the center, her eyes meeting mine with a mixture of sadness and relief. "We have been trapped for so long," she whispered, her voice echoing through the basement. "The pain and loss keep us bound here. Please, help us let go." Determined to fulfill their wish, I delved deeper into the journal, searching for any mention of rituals or rites that could aid in their release. The final entry provided the key, a simple act of remembrance and acknowledgement of their suffering. "To free the restless spirits, you must remember us and honor our memory. Light a candle in our name, speak our names, and let the love you hold guide us to peace." Following the instructions, I lit candles around the altar, each flame representing a beacon of hope and remembrance. I spoke aloud the names of Eleanor and her children, my voice filled with empathy and compassion. As I did, the basement seemed to lighten, the oppressive energy lifting as the spirits began to dissolve into the ether, their pain finally acknowledged and honored. The basement door swung open once more, the whispers now replaced by a peaceful silence. I felt a profound sense of relief and accomplishment, knowing that I had helped Eleanor and her children find the peace they had long been denied. Life returned to normal in our home on Elm Street. The basement was no longer a place of fear and mystery, but a sanctuary of memories and love. The knocks ceased, and the warmth that had once been an anomaly became a comforting presence that kept the basement functional and safe for our family. Reflecting on the experience, I realized the importance of listening to the silent cries of the past and honoring the memories of those who came before us. Eleanor Hart and her children had been lost to tragedy, but their spirits had found solace in our acknowledgement and compassion. Sometimes, when the winter winds howl outside and the house settles into a peaceful slumber, I catch a faint whisper of gratitude in the air, a silent thank you from beyond, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, love and empathy have the power to heal and bring peace to restless souls. Story number 6. Echoes of Innocence. Winter in Kansas had a way of wrapping the world in silence, the cold seeping into every nook and cranny of my old Victorian house on Willow Lane. I moved here alone, seeking solace after years of chaotic city life, craving the peace that only isolation could provide. The house was charming, with its intricate woodwork and spacious rooms, but there was an undeniable presence that lingered in the air, especially in the basement. From the moment I settled in, I felt a connection to the place, the crackling fireplace, the smell of aged wood, and the sturdy embrace of the old house offered a sense of security I hadn't felt in years. Yet, as the days shortened and winter's chill took hold, strange occurrences began to disrupt my newfound tranquility. It started subtly. Soft giggles echoed through the halls late at night, fading as quickly as they appeared. At first, I dismissed them as the creaks and groans of an old house adjusting to the cold, or perhaps the imagination of a tired mind. But as weeks turned into months, the laughter became more persistent, more insistent, always emanating from the basement. One particularly frigid evening, as snowflakes danced violently against the windows, I found myself unable to sleep. The house was unusually quiet, the only sounds the howling wind outside and the occasional drip of melting ice from the eaves. I sat up in bed, the eerie silence pressing down on me, and heard it again, the unmistakable sound of children's laughter echoing from below. Determined to uncover the source, I grabbed a flashlight and made my way to the basement door. The floorboards groaned under my weight as I descended the narrow stairs, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The basement was cluttered with old furniture, boxes of forgotten belongings, and stacks of firewood that Laura had insisted were necessary for the heating system. Despite its functionality, the basement always gave me an uneasy feeling, a sense that it held more than just physical clutter. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, the laughter stopped abruptly, replaced by an oppressive silence that seemed to press in on me from all sides. I swept the flashlight beam across the room, searching for any signs of life, but found nothing unusual. Shaking off the feeling of dread, I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut with a force that sent a jolt of fear through me. Heart pounding, I tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as I looked around, the darkness closing in on me. The temperature seemed to drop further, my breath visible in the frigid air. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it, a shadowy figure standing near the far wall, its form indistinct but undeniably human. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. "Is someone there?" The figure didn't respond. Instead, it began to move towards me, its presence growing more tangible with each step. I backed away, my mind racing for an explanation, but the figure continued its advance, the oppressive atmosphere intensifying. Desperate, I reached for my phone, trying to call for help, but there was no signal. The whispers of children's laughter returned, louder and more insistent, surrounding me like a suffocating blanket. I felt an invisible force pressing down on me, making it difficult to breathe. Just as I thought all hope was lost, the basement door creaked open, and a blinding light flooded the room. The figure recoiled, fading into the shadows as the warmth returned. Gasping for breath, I stumbled towards the door, which now swung open effortlessly. I sprinted up the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest, and slammed the basement door shut behind me. Leaning against it, I tried to steady my breathing, the fear slowly ebbing away. Laura, awakened by the commotion, rushed to my side, her eyes wide with concern. "What happened?" she asked, wrapping her arms around me. "I saw something down there," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "A shadow, a figure." It felt like it was trying to reach out to me. Laura nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Maybe it's just the house settling or some draft. These old buildings have a way of making noises that seem unnerving." But deep down, I knew it was more than that. There was a presence in our home, something that lingered in the basement, a restless spirit unable to find peace. Determined to uncover the truth, I began researching the history of our house. Local archives and old newspaper clippings revealed a tragic story from over 50 years ago. The house had once belonged to the Hart family, a mother, father, and their 2 young children. One bitterly cold winter, a fire had broken out in the basement, claiming the lives of the entire family. The cause of the fire remained a mystery, shrouded in whispers of foul play and unanswered questions. As I delved deeper, I discovered that the Hart children had been known for their laughter and playful nature, traits that now echoed hauntingly through our home. It seemed the spirits of the Hart family were trapped in the basement, their sorrow and pain binding them to the physical world. Determined to help them find peace, I reached out to a local paranormal investigator, Dr. Laura Bennett, known for her compassionate approach to restless spirits. She agreed to help us cleanse the basement and release the trapped souls. On the night of the ritual, the basement was prepared with candles, sage, and symbols meant to protect and guide the spirits. Dr. Bennett led us through the ceremony, her voice steady and reassuring as she chanted ancient incantations. The atmosphere grew tense, the air thick with anticipation and fear. As the ritual progressed, the temperature in the basement fluctuated, and the oppressive presence became more palpable. The children's laughter began again, softer this time, blending with the soft murmurs of the Hart family. Dr. Bennett encouraged us to focus our intentions on helping the spirits find peace, to release their pain and sorrow. Suddenly, the basement door slammed shut, and the room was plunged into darkness. The candles flickered violently, and the whispers grew louder, filled with a sense of longing and desperation. I felt a cold hand brush against my shoulder, and when I turned, there stood a ghostly apparition of a little girl, her eyes filled with sadness. "Please help us," she whispered, her voice echoing through the basement. "We can't move on." I stepped forward, tears welling up in my eyes. "We're here to help. Tell us what you need." The apparition pointed towards the old, charred remains of the furniture where the fire had started. Dr. Bennett began to speak softly, guiding us through a series of steps to release the spirits. Together, we chanted words of healing and forgiveness, acknowledging the pain and loss that had bound the Hart family to the basement. As we continued the ritual, the oppressive energy began to lift, the room growing warmer and the whispers fading into a gentle silence. The spirits of the Hart family materialized before us, their forms shimmering with a newfound sense of peace. The little girl smiled, her sorrowful eyes now filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice no longer tinged with fear. "We can finally rest." With that, the spirits began to fade, their presence dissolving into the ether as the basement door swung open once more. The warmth returned, the oppressive chill lifted, and the house felt lighter, free from the weight of the past. Life in our home on Willow Lane returned to normal, the strange occurrences replaced by the comforting sounds of a peaceful winter night. Emma and Jake slept soundly, their innocence preserved as the shadows of the past were finally laid to rest. Reflecting on the experience, I realized the importance of acknowledging and honoring the stories of those who came before us. The Hart family's tragic tale had been forgotten by time, but their spirits had reached out, seeking recognition and peace. By listening to their whispers and offering compassion, we had helped them find the closure they needed to move on. Sometimes, when the wind howls outside and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a faint echo of children's laughter, a haunting yet beautiful reminder of the night we bridged the gap between the living and the dead. It serves as a testament to the enduring power of empathy and the belief that even in the darkest of places, there is hope for redemption and peace. Story number 7. The Hidden Chamber. Moving to Colorado was supposed to be a fresh start for me and my family. After years of living in cramped apartments and dealing with the relentless pace of city life, the promise of a spacious home with a backyard seemed like the perfect escape. The house itself was a charming, albeit slightly worn, Victorian structure nestled in a quiet neighborhood surrounded by towering pines and the distant hum of mountain winds. From the moment we stepped inside, there was a sense of history that permeated the air. The high ceilings, intricate woodwork, and large windows with views of the snowy landscape gave the house character and warmth. My wife, Laura, and our 2 children, Emily and Jake, were thrilled with their new rooms, each finding their own little sanctuary within the sprawling house. The first few weeks were blissful. We settled into our routines, unpacking boxes and decorating our spaces. Laura took charge of the kitchen, transforming it into a cozy hub with homemade cookies always in the oven. Emily, an avid reader, transformed her bedroom into a mini library, while Jake, full of energy, claimed the basement as his own personal adventure zone. But it wasn't long before we began to notice something unusual about the basement. Despite our daily activities there, it remained inexplicably warm, a stark contrast to the freezing temperatures outside. Winter in Colorado was brutal, with temperatures often plunging well below zero. Yet the basement never seemed to succumb to the cold. This peculiarity was both fascinating and slightly unnerving, but we chalked it up to the old house's heating quirks. One chilly evening, as snowflakes danced furiously against the windows, I decided to explore the basement further. Armed with a flashlight and a screwdriver, I began to inspect the various storage areas, looking for anything out of the ordinary. As I moved deeper into the basement, I noticed a section of the wall that seemed different, slightly more damp and colder to the touch than the surrounding areas. Curious, I ran my fingers along the plaster, feeling for any irregularities. That's when I noticed it, a small, nearly invisible seam in the wall, just above eye level. My heart quickened as I realized it was a concealed doorway, expertly hidden behind years of accumulated dust and grime. I called out to Laura and the kids, but they were upstairs, oblivious to my discovery. Taking a deep breath, I pried open the hidden door, revealing a narrow passageway that led into darkness. The air that wafted out was thick with the scent of old wood and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet. I stepped inside, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, revealing a small, cluttered chamber that seemed untouched by time. The room was cramped, with low ceilings and walls adorned with strange, intricate drawings. Symbols that looked ancient and out of place decorated every surface, their meanings lost to me. In the corner stood an old wooden table, the surface scarred and worn, bearing the marks of countless hands that had worked upon it. Atop the table rested a candle lamp, its flame flickering gently despite the absence of any recent wind or movement. As I approached the table, a chill ran down my spine. The candle's flame seemed unnaturally warm, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. I reached out to touch the lamp, but hesitated, a sense of foreboding settling over me. The room felt alive, the symbols on the walls seeming to pulse with a hidden energy, whispering secrets I couldn't comprehend. Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped, and the candle's flame flared brightly before extinguishing itself, plunging the chamber into darkness. I fumbled for my flashlight, the beam flickering uncertainly as I tried to make sense of what was happening. That's when I heard it, a soft, distant hum, like a lullaby sung by an unseen presence. I froze, my breath visible in the cold air. As the humming grew louder, more distinct, the symbols on the walls began to shimmer, glowing faintly with an ethereal light. My mind raced, struggling to rationalize the supernatural elements unfolding before me. Was this some kind of hidden room used for rituals? Or perhaps the remnants of a forgotten family's secrets? Gathering my courage, I took a step closer to the table, the humming now enveloping me, filling the room with its haunting melody. I noticed an old journal lying among the clutter, its pages yellowed and brittle. Carefully, I opened it, the handwriting elegant yet shaky, the ink faded but still legible. October 3rd, 1952. Tonight, the winds howl like the cries of the lost. The symbols on the walls have started to move, guiding me towards something I cannot yet understand. The warmth in this room feels like a beacon, drawing me into the unknown. I fear what lies ahead, but I must follow the path laid before me. As I read the journal, a sense of sadness and desperation washed over me. The words spoke of someone seeking answers, a journey into the depths of the unknown. The connection between the journal and the chamber was undeniable. This room was a place of significance, a hidden sanctuary for secrets that time had tried to bury. Just then, the basement door above me creaked open, snapping me out of my reverie. Laura's voice echoed from above, calling me back. "John, are you down there? Everything okay?" I closed the journal quickly, slipping it back onto the table. "Yeah, I'm fine," I called back, forcing a calm tone. "Just found something interesting." As I turned to leave, the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter, the humming intensifying into a cacophony of whispers and cries. The door behind me slammed shut, locking me inside the chamber. Panic surged through me as I pounded on the door, shouting for help, but the sounds were swallowed by the oppressive atmosphere of the room. The candle lamp reignited itself, the flame burning steadily now, illuminating the chamber with a warm, yet unsettling glow. The symbols on the walls seemed to shift and change, forming patterns that resembled maps and constellations I couldn't recognize. I realized that this room was more than just a hidden storage space. It was a gateway, a place where the past and present converged in a dance of light and shadow. Desperate to escape, I searched the room for another way out, but the walls seemed to close in, the space becoming smaller and more claustrophobic. The humming turned into distinct voices, their tones pleading and sorrowful. "Help us find peace," they echoed, a chorus of lost souls trapped in time. In a moment of clarity, I understood what I needed to do. The journal had guided me to this place, and now it was my responsibility to help those who were still seeking closure. I took a deep breath, focusing on the words that had resonated through the chamber. "I'm here to help," I declared, my voice steady despite the fear gripping me. The symbols on the walls began to glow with an intense light, and the chamber seemed to shift, the past melding with the present. Visions of the past flooded my mind, images of Eleanor Hart and her family, their lives filled with love and laughter, abruptly shattered by the tragic accident that had claimed their lives. The fire had been no ordinary blaze. It was as if dark forces had conspired to consume them, leaving their spirits bound to the house. I realized that the warmth in the basement was a manifestation of their lingering presence, their inability to move on from the pain and loss. The candle lamp was a symbol of their hope, a beacon guiding them towards the light of peace that still eluded them. Determined to honor their memory, I began to perform the ritual outlined in the journal, using the symbols and patterns as a guide. The chamber responded to my actions, the symbols glowing brighter with each step I took towards fulfilling the ritual's requirements. The humming turned into a harmonious melody, the voices intertwining in a symphony of release and gratitude. As I completed the final steps of the ritual, the chamber was bathed in a brilliant light, the oppressive darkness lifting as the spirits of Eleanor and her family began to fade, their presence finally finding the peace they had long sought. The basement door swung open once more, the warmth dissipating, replaced by the crisp winter air outside. Exhausted but relieved, I made my way upstairs, the weight of the night's events settling in my mind. Laura and the kids greeted me with concerned smiles, unaware of the supernatural battle that had taken place beneath their feet. I knew that our home was no longer just a place of comfort and safety, but a sanctuary where lost souls had found their way home. Reflecting on the experience, I realized the importance of understanding and compassion in the face of the unknown. The symbols and rituals of the past had guided me to help those who were trapped by tragedy, their stories a testament to the enduring power of love and the quest for peace. Sometimes, when the winter winds howl outside and the house settles into silence, I catch a faint echo of children's laughter mingling with the soft whispers of gratitude. It's a haunting yet beautiful reminder of the night I bridged the gap between the living and the dead, helping lost souls find their way home through the power of empathy and the magic of ancient symbols etched into the very walls of our home.